My sister made a prank call to my boss and cost me my job. After I landed a better job, my whole family started demanding money. I smiled and said, "Check your mailboxes." Their faces went pale when they opened them. Can you imagine having your entire career sabotaged by your own sister, leaving you jobless and utterly heartbroken? Then, years later, that very same family who watched you drown suddenly reappears, hands outstretched, demanding their share of your unexpected success. What would you do? My name is Autumn, and back in 2008, I truly never thought my own sister, Ashley, would destroy my career with a single calculated phone call. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any knife, doesn't it? After Ashley got me fired, I had to rebuild my entire life from absolute zero. But what happened next? Well, I found an unexpected kind of success that completely transformed me. And when word of my newfound prosperity finally got out, my family, they suddenly remembered I existed. Their hands were out, demanding their fair share as if they were entitled to it. The sheer audacity, their expectation of handouts after years of sabotage and neglect, honestly, it left me speechless. A knowing, slightly dangerous smile in the voice, so I just smiled sweetly and told them, "Check your mailboxes tomorrow." Their faces when they did? Priceless. Before we dive into this wild ride, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself when family crosses a line, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. Growing up in our suburban Boston neighborhood, we looked like the quintessential American family from the outside. The perfect family with our colonial-style home, weekend barbecues, and those mandatory family game nights. But behind those closed doors, the dynamics were anything but healthy. From early childhood, I was somehow designated the responsible one. By age 10, I was practically managing household bills, making sure my younger sister, Ashley, got to school on time, and constantly trying to keep the peace between my perpetually arguing parents. Ashley, 2 years my junior, was meanwhile encouraged to just be a kid, which, in our house, was code for letting her avoid any responsibility whatsoever. Ashley, with her blonde hair, blue eyes, and cheerleader charm, grew up believing the world revolved around her. My parents, Margaret and Richard, treated her like their precious princess, while I was more like the castle staff. Ashley has a sensitive spirit. My mother would coo whenever Ashley threw a tantrum about chores. "You're just naturally more capable, Autumn." Translation: you handle everything so Ashley isn't inconvenienced. My older brother, Ethan, at 30, quickly learned it was easier to just side with Ashley. "Just let her have her way," he'd always say. "It's not worth the drama." He figured out early that keeping Ashley happy meant a peaceful life for him, even if it came at my expense. Despite this wildly imbalanced treatment, I poured myself into my studies. I was determined to forge my own path. I maintained excellent grades through high school, earned a partial scholarship to Boston University, and worked 2 part-time jobs to cover the rest. Meanwhile, my parents paid for Ashley's full ride to 3 different colleges, none of which she completed. "College just isn't the right environment for my creativity," she'd declare after each dropout. And my parents would just nod sympathetically, their eyes full of understanding. This pattern continued through her brief, expensive attempts at becoming a yoga instructor, a life coach, a fashion blogger, and a real estate agent, all funded by my parents, despite their constant complaints about their tight budget. When I finally graduated with my marketing degree, I organized a small celebration dinner. Ashley, naturally, arrived 2 hours late, made a huge scene about the restaurant's limited vegan options. She was only vegan that particular week, mind you, and then burst into tears when my father toasted my accomplishment, effectively turning the entire evening into a comforting Ashley session. I secured my professional position at Meridian Marketing, a mid-sized firm downtown. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but I had benefits, and more importantly, real growth potential. I rented a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, bought professional clothes from thrift stores, and started building my career, brick by careful brick. Ashley's resentment, however, grew with each small success I achieved. When I was featured in a local business publication for a campaign I'd worked on, she accidentally spilled red wine on my only professional dress the night before an important client meeting. When I was invited to speak at a marketing conference, She called me repeatedly during my presentation until I had to turn my phone off, missing an important call from my boss later. But the worst incident before the firing happened when I was interviewing for a position at a larger, more prestigious firm. I'd carefully laid out my interview outfit the night before, a navy blue suit I'd saved for months to purchase. The morning of the interview, I discovered the suit completely covered in foundation makeup that simply wouldn't come out. Ashley claimed she'd been looking for a tissue in my room and must have knocked over her makeup. I missed the interview, and with it, that incredible opportunity. Despite all of this, I desperately tried to maintain some semblance of a relationship with my family. Sunday dinners were mandatory in my parents' eyes, and I showed up dutifully, enduring Ashley's constant backhanded compliments and my parents' subtle dismissals of my accomplishments. Marketing isn't really changing the world, though, is it? My father would say after I shared news of a successful campaign. But when Ashley announced her latest scheme to become an influencer, they were all enthusiasm and support. I kept the peace. I swallowed my frustrations. I just focused on building my career at Meridian. After 2 years of consistent, hard-earned performance, I was being considered for a junior management position. This promotion would mean a significant salary increase, more creative control, and finally, the validation that my hard work was paying off. I had no idea that Ashley had been watching my progress with growing bitterness, or that she was about to take drastic action to derail absolutely everything I'd worked so hard to build. After 2.5 years at Meridian Marketing, I was truly hitting my stride. My client retention rate was the highest in the department, and I'd brought in 3 new major accounts in the past quarter alone. My boss, Victoria Pearson, had even started inviting me to leadership meetings, dropping clear hints about my future with the company. That promotion to junior marketing director, it was practically within my grasp. The position had opened when Derek, my mentor, accepted a role in Chicago. Victoria had asked me to prepare a presentation outlining my vision for the department's future, essentially an audition for the role. I spent weeks preparing, staying late at the office, fine-tuning every single slide, practicing my delivery until I could present it in my sleep. The big presentation was scheduled for a Thursday morning meeting with the executive team. Wednesday night, I called my family to cancel our usual Sunday dinner, explaining that I needed the weekend to prepare. "Of course your job comes first," my mother said with that familiar, passive-aggressive sigh. Ashley was planning to announce some big news, but I suppose that can wait. I felt that familiar guilt rise, but I stood my ground. "This is really important, Mom. I'll make it up to Ashley next weekend." Later that night, Ashley called. "Way to ruin my special announcement," she snapped without preamble. "I'm sorry, Ash, what's your news?" I asked. "Wouldn't you like to know?" she shot back. "Some sister you are, always thinking about yourself and your precious career." I tried to explain how important this presentation was, but she just hung up on me. I went to bed feeling uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. I needed to focus on tomorrow. Thursday morning, I woke early, put on my best suit, a charcoal gray one I'd splurged on for important client meetings, and headed to the office an hour early to set up the conference room. When I swiped my key card at the building entrance, the security panel flashed red. Denied. I tried again. Same result. Figuring it was a system glitch, I called up to reception, but Donna, the receptionist, sounded strange. "I'm sorry, Miss Adams," she said, her voice tight, "but I've been instructed not to let you in. Miss Pearson would like you to call her directly." Confused and increasingly alarmed, I called Victoria. Her normally warm voice was now ice cold. "I'm extremely disappointed in you, Autumn. After everything we've built, to throw it away like this is beyond unprofessional." "Victoria," I stammered, "I don't understand." "Don't insult me by pretending," she cut me off. "You called me at 11:30 last night, clearly intoxicated, saying you were quitting Effective immediately. You said, and I quote, 'The company is a joke, and you're the biggest joke of all.' You made racist comments about our clients and said vile things about your colleagues. I recorded the call as company policy requires, so don't bother denying it." My blood ran cold. "Victoria, that wasn't me. I was home preparing for today's presentation." "I would never." "Autumn," she interrupted, her voice hard. "Your personal belongings will be couriered to your home address. Your final paycheck will be processed according to state law. Do not attempt to enter the building again, or we will involve security." The call ended. I stood on the sidewalk outside my office building, dizzy with shock and confusion. People I'd worked with for years walked past me, averting their eyes or giving me looks of disgust. Finally, Brian from accounting approached me cautiously. "Autumn, you should go home. Everyone heard about the call." "Brian, I didn't make any call," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Someone is impersonating me." He looked incredibly uncomfortable, but handed me his phone. "Someone recorded part of it, and it's been shared around the office. Listen." I heard a voice that sounded horrifyingly like mine, slurring words, saying terrible things about Victoria and the company, using language I would never use. The voice was similar to mine, yes, but with slight differences only people who knew me well would notice. That's when it hit me. Whispering, Ashley. She could always do a perfect impression of me, a talent she'd used to call my high school crushes and embarrass me, or to prank my friends. "Brian," I said, my voice shaking with a dawning horror. "That's not me. That's my sister. She can mimic my voice." The pity in his eyes told me he didn't believe a word. "Just go home, Autumn. Don't make this worse." Security arrived moments later and escorted me off the property. As I walked home in a daze, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. One of my colleagues, sharing a recording of the call. I forced myself to listen to more of it, confirming my suspicions. The cadence, certain phrases, it was definitely Ashley's imitation of me, though convincing enough to fool my boss. I went straight to my parents' house, knowing Ashley would be there. She was sitting in the kitchen with my mother, scrolling through Instagram filters, looking utterly carefree. "You called my boss pretending to be me," I said, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "You got me fired." Ashley looked up, momentarily startled, before her face settled into an innocent mask. "What are you talking about? Don't lie to me," I shouted, no longer able to contain my fury. "You called my office last night, imitated my voice, and got me fired the day of my big presentation." My mother stepped between us. "Autumn, calm down. Why would Ashley do something like that?" "Because she's always been jealous of me," I screamed. "Because I was about to get promoted. Because she can't stand to see me succeed." Ashley's facade finally cracked, a brief smirk flashing across her face before she burst into crocodile tears. "I was just playing a joke. I didn't think they'd actually fire you. I was going to call back today and say it was a prank." My father entered the kitchen. "What's all this shouting?" I explained what had happened, even showing him the recording on my phone. Instead of being horrified, he just frowned at me. "You're overreacting, Autumn. Ashley made a mistake. She didn't mean any harm." "A mistake?" I whispered, utterly gutted. "She deliberately got me fired. My reputation in the industry is ruined. No one's going to hire me after this." Ashley sniffled dramatically. "It was just supposed to be funny. You're always so serious about your job. I thought you'd just laugh. I worked there for almost 3 years. I retorted. I was about to be promoted. My mother put her arm around Ashley, hugging her close. "You know, your sister has a different sense of humor. And honestly, if they fired you that easily, maybe it wasn't a good place to work anyway." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now? She impersonated me, said racist things in my name, and burned my professional reputation to the ground." My brother, Ethan, arrived, summoned by my mother's urgent text. After hearing both sides, he just shrugged. "It's not great what Ashley did, but you're making it worse by freaking out. Just explain to your boss what happened." I tried. I cried. "They don't believe me. They have a recording of me saying horrible things." "Then maybe take this as a sign to try something new," my father suggested, as if I'd simply had a minor setback rather than a catastrophic betrayal. "You were always talking about how stressful that job was anyway." I looked at my family, Ashley's fake tears, my mother's protective embrace around her, my father's dismissive attitude, Ethan's utter indifference, and I realized a fundamental, soul-crushing truth. They would never take my side against Ashley. They would never hold her accountable for anything. "I need you all to acknowledge what she did," I said quietly, my voice raw. "I need an apology, and I need you to understand how serious this is." Instead, I got variations of "you're overreacting," "it was just a joke," and "you'll find another job." Not one person in my family truly acknowledged the gravity of what Ashley had done. I left their house that day with a clarity I'd never had before. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had just conditionally excused the deliberate sabotage of my career. Something fundamental broke inside me that day, and paradoxically, something else grew stronger. The weeks following my firing were some of the darkest of my life. I filed for unemployment benefits, but there was a review of my case due to being terminated for cause. My emergency savings covered less than 2 months of expenses, and the Boston rental market wasn't exactly forgiving. I applied for dozens of marketing positions, but word had spread in the tight-knit Boston community. Even when I managed to get interviews, the conversations inevitably turned awkward. "We heard about an incident at Meridian," one interviewer said delicately. "Would you care to explain that situation?" No matter how I explained, the damage was done. Who would believe it was my sister impersonating me? It sounded like a desperate, implausible excuse. By the 6-week mark, I was skipping meals to stretch my budget and had received a notice from my landlord about my late rent. I avoided my family's calls, unable to bear their dismissive attitude or Ashley's superficial apologies that always circled back to how I was overreacting. One particularly low evening, sitting at my kitchen table with spreadsheets, calculating how many more days I could keep my apartment, I received a text from my mother. "Ashley's moving to New York for an amazing opportunity with a social media company. We're having a celebration dinner Sunday. Your presence is expected." No questions about how I was doing. No acknowledgement of my situation. Just a command to celebrate the sister who had destroyed my career. I didn't respond. I didn't attend. The next day, I pawned my grandmother's silver bracelet, the one meaningful piece of jewelry I owned, just to cover my rent. That afternoon, more out of desperation than networking enthusiasm, I forced myself to attend a free tech industry mixer downtown. I couldn't afford new business cards, so I carefully crossed out my Meridian information on my old ones and wrote my personal email. The event was packed with startup employees wearing casual clothes that somehow still looked expensive. I felt conspicuously out of place in my one remaining professional outfit, now slightly too loose after weeks of budget meals. "You look like you could use this more than me," said a voice beside me. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair held out a glass of wine. "Open bar is the only reason half these people show up anyway." "That obvious, huh?" I attempted a weak smile, accepting the glass. "I'm Elaine Winters," she said, extending her hand. "Chief Operating Officer at Nexus Technologies." "Automatums," I replied, currently between opportunities. "Honest. I like that." Elaine's sharp eyes assessed me. "What's your field?" I briefly explained my marketing background, carefully avoiding details about how my last position ended. "Interesting," she mused. "We actually need someone who understands traditional marketing. All these tech kids think social media is the only channel that matters." She pulled out a business card. "We're a fintech startup developing an app that helps people manage shared expenses. Come by tomorrow at 10. I can't promise anything glamorous, but we need smart people who understand how to communicate with audiences over 30. I stared at the card. Just like that. Just like that. I trust my instincts about people. Always have. She gestured around the room. "Everyone here is trying to be someone. You're just trying to survive. That kind of hunger is valuable." The next day, I arrived at the Nexus Technologies office, a converted warehouse space with exposed brick walls and too many plants. The position Elaine offered was several steps down from my previous role, essentially a marketing coordinator when I'd been on track for a directorship. The salary was barely enough to cover my expenses, but it was something. A lifeline when I was drowning. "I should warn you," I said during the interview, "I left my last position under difficult circumstances." Elaine waved this away. "We're a startup. Everyone here has a past. What matters is what you bring to the table." I accepted the position on the spot. The work was initially mundane, creating basic marketing materials, managing social media accounts, writing blog posts about financial management. But the environment was nothing like Meridian's stuffy corporate structure. Ideas were valued regardless of who suggested them. Failures were treated as learning opportunities rather than career-ending mistakes. 3 weeks in, during a brainstorming session about how to market their app to non-tech-savvy users, I suggested developing a series of animated explainer videos featuring relatable characters navigating awkward money situations between friends and family. "That's actually brilliant," said Noah, the skeptical product manager who rarely approved marketing ideas. We've been so focused on the technical features, we forgot about the emotional component of lending and borrowing. Elaine gave me a small nod of approval, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Competence, value, purpose. My tiny apartment became my sanctuary. I deleted social media apps to avoid seeing updates from my family or former colleagues. I started journaling, trying to process my feelings of betrayal and abandonment. I adopted a rescue dog, a nervous one-eyed terrier mix named Bella, who had also been discarded through no fault of her own. Gradually, I built a routine. Early mornings with Bella at the dog park, work at Nexus, evenings spent learning about fintech and app development so I could contribute more effectively. I made one friend, Madison, the office manager at Nexus, who invited me to a weekly trivia night. Family drama, she said when I vaguely explained why I always declined invitations that fell on Sundays. Been there. My brother stole my identity and ran up $20,000 in credit card debt when I was in college. How did you handle it? I asked, genuinely curious. Pressed charges, she said matter-of-factly. Haven't spoken to him in 7 years. Best decision I ever made. Her straightforwardness was refreshing after years of my family's emotional manipulation. Madison didn't expect me to forgive toxic behavior in the name of family loyalty. 6 months into my time at Nexus, I had paid off the small debts I'd accumulated during unemployment and was starting to rebuild my savings. The company was gaining traction, with user numbers steadily climbing. My explainer video series had received incredibly positive feedback and was credited with improving user retention. I still felt the ache of my family's betrayal, but it no longer dominated my thoughts. I was building something new, a life defined by my choices rather than their expectations. What I didn't realize was that this modest recovery was just the beginning. Nexus Technologies was about to take off in a way none of us anticipated, and my decision to take a chance on a struggling startup was about to change absolutely everything. Exactly 6 months and 2 weeks after joining Nexus Technologies, our small team gathered in the conference room for what we thought was a routine meeting. Elaine entered with a bottle of champagne, followed by the CEO, Daniel, who was rarely in the office. We did it, Elaine announced, popping the cork with practiced ease. Venture capital funding, $15 million. The room erupted in cheers. For a struggling startup that had been operating on fumes and faith, this was life-changing news. Daniel explained that a major investment firm had been impressed with our user growth and retention rates, metrics directly tied to the marketing strategies I'd implemented. Your explainer video series sealed the deal, he told me afterward, raising his plastic champagne cup in a toast. They said it demonstrated we understand our market in a way most fintech companies don't. The funding changed everything. We moved from our cramped warehouse space to proper offices in a downtown high-rise. Our team expanded rapidly, and I received a promotion to marketing director with a salary that made my eyes widen when I saw the offer letter. You earned this, Elaine said when I expressed disbelief. You saw what we were trying to do and translated it for normal humans. That's rare in this industry. The promotion came with stock options, standard practice in startups, though I hadn't expected to receive such a generous allocation. At the time, they seemed like monopoly money. Nexus was still private, still unproven in the larger market. 9 months later, everything changed again. Our app's user base had grown exponentially, particularly after we added features for roommates and small businesses to manage shared expenses. A major financial technology corporation made an acquisition offer that the board simply couldn't refuse. The day the acquisition was finalized, Daniel called me into his office. Your options are fully vested because of the acquisition, he explained. At the agreed share price, they're worth approximately $2,700,000. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. Million? He just smiled. Welcome to Rich Autumn. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time pays off. I left his office in a daze, clutching paperwork I barely understood. After taxes, it would be less, of course, but still. I had gone from pawning my grandmother's bracelet to having more money than I'd ever imagined. The acquiring company retained most of Nexus's team, including me, with generous compensation packages. Suddenly, I was a marketing executive at a major corporation, leading a team of people, some older and more experienced than myself. I bought my grandmother's bracelet back from the pawn shop, along with every other piece they had that reminded me of her. Then I purchased a beautiful townhouse in Beacon Hill, a historic neighborhood I'd always admired but never imagined I could afford. I furnished it simply but elegantly, creating the peaceful sanctuary I'd always wanted. Bella upgraded from nervous rescue to pampered princess with a custom dog bed in every room and regular appointments with a doggy therapist to work through her anxiety issues. I started seeing a therapist too, working through the complex feelings about my family that resurfaced as my circumstances improved. "You've achieved remarkable success," Dr. Patterson observed during one session. "How does that feel in the context of your family's lack of support?" "Validating," I admitted, "but also lonely. I wish I had people who truly cared to share it with." This realization led me to focus on building genuine connections. I deepened my friendship with Madison, who had also done well in the acquisition. I joined a photography club, pursuing a passion I'd abandoned years ago. I volunteered walking shelter dogs on weekends, finding purpose, and helping animals like Bella find their forever homes. Throughout this period of transformation, I maintained my distance from my family. I hadn't blocked their numbers, but I rarely responded to their occasional texts. The messages were always surface level anyway: birthday wishes, holiday greetings, never acknowledgments of past harm or genuine inquiries about my well-being. I did change my email address and moved without providing my new address, quietly disconnecting from their ability to reach me in person. I wasn't hiding, exactly, but I needed space to heal and grow without their toxic influence. 16 months after the day Ashley got me fired, I was featured in Boston business journals, 40 Under 40 list, highlighting local business leaders making an impact. The article included my photo and a brief profile detailing my role in Nexus's success and subsequent acquisition. 3 days after the article was published, my phone lit up with notifications, texts, calls, emails from every member of my family, suddenly very interested in reconnecting with their long-lost daughter and sister. "So proud of you, sweetheart," my mother texted, as if we'd been in regular contact. "Always knew you'd make it big, sis," from Ethan, who had never once reached out during my unemployment. And finally, from Ashley, "OMG, you're famous. We have so much to catch up on. Lunch this weekend. Love you." I placed my phone face down on my desk and took a deep breath. The family that had dismissed my career, enabled my sabotage, and abandoned me in my darkest moment was now eager to bask in the reflection of my success. Dr. Patterson had warned me this might happen. "When you visibly succeed, toxic family members often reappear," she'd said. "Not because they've changed, but because they see potential benefit to themselves." I waited a week before responding, using the time to center myself and consult with my therapist. When I finally agreed to meet my family, I was calm, prepared, and protected by the boundaries I'd established in their absence. What I couldn't have anticipated was just how nakedly their financial interests would drive our reunion, or how I would ultimately respond to their demands. The restaurant I chose for our reunion was neutral territory, an upscale bistro downtown, public enough to discourage emotional scenes, but private enough for serious conversation. I arrived early, selecting a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. My parents arrived looking exactly as I remembered, yet somehow smaller. My mother's eyes widened as she took in my appearance. The tailored blazer, the subtle but expensive jewelry, the confident posture that comes from knowing your own worth. "Autumn," she exclaimed, moving in for a hug. I didn't return it. "You look different." "Professional success agrees with me," I replied, gesturing for them to sit. My father's handshake was firmer than usual. "Always knew you had potential, kiddo. Just needed the right opportunity." The cognitive dissonance was staggering. This was the same man who had dismissed my career ambitions for years, who had told me my firing was probably for the best. Ethan arrived next, with a new girlfriend in tow, a wide-eyed woman he introduced as Kayla, who seemed inappropriately excited to meet me, given we were strangers. "Autumn's the tech executive I was telling you about," he said, his voice carrying just a bit too far across the restaurant. Finally, Ashley made her grand entrance, 20 minutes late as usual. She'd lost weight, changed her hair, and was wearing an outfit that looked suspiciously like it had been purchased specifically to impress me. "My successful sister," she squealed, drawing attention from nearby tables. "Look at you. We're practically twins now that I'm in the corporate world, too. I raised an eyebrow. You're working in corporate now? Well, I'm consulting for an influencer marketing agency, she said vaguely. Very similar to what you do, just more creative. The waiter took our drink orders. Sparkling water for me, expensive wine for everyone else. I noticed how my father selected the priciest bottle on the menu without hesitation. The entitlement was already showing. For the next half hour, conversation remained superficial. My mother detailed renovations to their house. Ethan bragged about a promotion at his mid-level sales job, and Ashley described her almost famous social media presence. Not once did anyone ask substantive questions about my life or acknowledge our long estrangement. It was during the main course that their true agenda emerged. So, my father began, refilling his wine glass. Your mother and I have been thinking about retirement. That's nice, I replied neutrally. The thing is, he continued, the market hasn't been kind to our investments. The house needs a new roof, and there's the matter of your mother's medical bills from last year. I frowned. Medical bills? What happened? My mother looked surprised that I would even ask. Just some routine tests. Nothing serious. But insurance doesn't cover everything, you know. This was the first I'd heard of any health concerns, despite this supposedly being last year. Anyway, my father pressed on, we've been looking at our options, and we're wondering if you might be in a position to help us out. Just until the market recovers. And there it was, the real reason for the reunion. What kind of help were you thinking of? I asked, though I already knew. Well, with your new position, the article mentioned a successful acquisition. We thought perhaps a small loan. He named a figure that would have been my entire annual salary at Meridian. Before I could respond, Ethan jumped in. Speaking of opportunities, I've been developing a business plan. He pulled out a folder containing 3 poorly formatted pages. It's an app that connects dog owners for playdates. Like Tinder, but for dogs. Sounds like the dog park, I observed dryly. No, it's completely different, he insisted. All I need is seed funding. About half of what Mom and Dad need should cover initial development. I noticed Kayla's eager nodding. Clearly, she'd been promised a role in this imaginary company. Ashley, not to be outdone, placed her hand on mine. I know we've had our differences, Autumn. That silly phone prank. Water under the bridge, right? My jaw tightened at her casual characterization of the deliberate sabotage that had upended my life. The thing is, she continued, oblivious to my reaction, I'm this close to making it big as an influencer. She held her thumb and forefinger a millimeter apart. I just need professional equipment and a proper studio setup, maybe $50,000. I'll pay you back with endorsements for your company. I looked around the table at my family. These people who had dismissed, sabotaged, and abandoned me, now united in their expectation that I would finance their lives. Let me understand, I said carefully, my voice dangerously calm. You want me to give you money? After everything that happened? My mother's expression turned wounded. Sweetheart, we're family. Families help each other. Where was that family spirit when Ashley got me fired? When I was skipping meals to pay rent? You're still upset about that? Ashley rolled her eyes. It was over a year ago, and clearly it worked out for the best. No thanks to any of you, I replied, my voice sharp. My father leaned forward. Look, Autumn, we raised you. Put a roof over your head, food on the table. Is it so wrong to expect some gratitude now that you've made it? The entitlement was breathtaking. In their minds, my success wasn't something I'd earned despite their sabotage and lack of support. It was something they deserved to benefit from. I need time to think about this, I said finally, signaling for the check. Don't take too long, my father warned. The roof won't fix itself. I paid the exorbitant bill without comment and left the restaurant with a promise to be in touch. In the taxi home, I leaned my head against the cool window and let the tears come. Not for the money they wanted, but for the family I'd never really had. Over the next week, their messages increased in frequency and urgency. My mother sent photos of water damage from the supposedly leaking roof. Ethan forwarded amateurish business projections showing how I'd triple my investment in his app. Ashley sent links to the exact camera equipment she needed, with not-so-subtle hints about her birthday approaching. During a session with Dr. Patterson, I vented my frustration. They don't care about me. They never did. They just see me as an ATM now. What do you want from them? she asked. Accountability, recognition of how they treated me, genuine remorse. And if they're incapable of that? The question hung in the air. What if they were incapable of the emotional honesty I needed? What if the transactional relationship they were offering was all they knew how to give? After much reflection, I made my decision. I texted each family member the exact same message. I've given your request some thought. Expect something in your mailboxes next week. Their responses were immediate and enthusiastic, filled with emojis and exclamation points. My mother even suggested a family dinner to celebrate. I declined politely, saying I was busy with work. Then, I set about preparing 4 very special packages, each one carefully tailored to its recipient. I spent a full weekend planning what to send my family. This wasn't about revenge. I'd moved beyond that desire. This was about accountability, about boundaries, and perhaps about offering them something more valuable than money, the truth. For each package, I purchased beautiful, heavyweight stationery and matching envelopes. I wanted the presentation to match the seriousness of my message. I arranged for tracked delivery, requiring signatures, ensuring each package would reach its intended recipient. For Ashley, I compiled a comprehensive file. It contained a printed transcript of her prank call to my boss, which I'd obtained through a former colleague who had finally believed my version of events. Alongside it, I included documentation of the financial hardship that followed my firing, overdue rent notices, utility shut-off warnings, the pawn ticket for my grandmother's bracelet. I added screenshots of texts she'd sent during that period, dismissing my situation as not that bad and suggesting I just get another job. I even included a letter from my therapist with personal details redacted, outlining the psychological impact of workplace sabotage and family betrayal. Finally, I added confirmation of a $5,000 donation made in Ashley's name to a workplace bullying prevention organization. The donation came with mandatory attendance at their next awareness workshop. I included a personal note. Ashley, you've shown me who you are repeatedly throughout our lives. The phone call that cost me my job wasn't a prank or a joke. It was deliberate sabotage, born of jealousy and entitlement. I don't believe you're capable of genuine remorse, but perhaps this donation in your name will help others avoid experiencing what I did. I've forgiven you for my own peace, but forgiveness doesn't mean financing your lifestyle or maintaining a relationship that harms me. I wish you growth and self-awareness. For my parents, I created a different package. It contained financial literacy books, retirement planning guides, and contact information for legitimate financial advisors. I included property records showing they had refinanced their house 3 times in the past decade, despite claiming financial prudence. I added a spreadsheet showing that if they'd invested the money they spent on Ashley's failed ventures, they would have more than enough for retirement and home repairs. Most significantly, I included a detailed letter documenting every instance I could remember of their emotional favoritism, their dismissal of my achievements, and their enabling of Ashley's destructive behavior. I paired each example with research on family dynamics and emotional neglect, highlighting the patterns they had established. Their note read, "Mom and Dad, I'm not the family bank, and my success doesn't obligate me to fund your retirement or compensate for poor financial decisions." The roof didn't suddenly start leaking the day my business success was published. I've included resources that will actually help your situation, along with the name of a family therapist who specializes in healing damaged parent-child relationships. If you ever wish to develop a genuine connection based on mutual respect rather than financial expectation, that would be my preferred investment. For Ethan, I created a package addressing his pattern of taking the path of least resistance. I included a proper business plan template with annotations showing the glaring gaps in his dog app concept. I added market research on the pet industry and statistics on startup failure rates. I included a gift certificate for career counseling sessions and contacts for legitimate small business incubators in Boston. His note was shorter. "Ethan, you've always chosen the easiest path, including siding with Ashley and our parents, regardless of right and wrong. I'm offering you something better than money, the tools to create your own success rather than attaching yourself to mine. I'd welcome a relationship with a brother who stands on his own and stands up for what's right, even when it's difficult." And for Kayla, who I just met but was clearly being pulled into the family dynamics, I sent a small gift card to a coffee shop with a simple note. "Be careful whose family you marry into." Best wishes, Autumn. I sent all 4 packages on a Monday morning, then turned off my phone for the day, taking Bella for a long hike in the woods outside the city. I needed space from the inevitable fallout. When I returned and checked my messages that evening, the reaction was exactly as I'd expected: outrage, disbelief, and accusations of cruelty. My mother had left 7 voicemails, each more tearful than the last, oscillating between, "How could you embarrass us this way?" and "After everything we've done for you." My father's messages were colder, calling me ungrateful and selfish, threatening to "tell the whole family how you've treated us." Ethan's response was a single text: "Low blow, sis. Real low blow." Ashley's reaction was the most extreme: a string of incoherent, angry messages followed by a final text saying, "You'll regret this. Nobody treats me this way." I felt a strange calm as I listened to and read their responses. Not one of them engaged with the actual content of what I'd sent. Not one acknowledged the patterns I documented or expressed any interest in building a healthier relationship. They were angry because I had refused to be used. Nothing more. That night, I sat on my balcony overlooking the Boston skyline, Bella curled contentedly in my lap. I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd finally put down a heavy burden I'd been carrying my entire life, the burden of seeking approval and love from people incapable of providing it. Dr. Patterson had warned me this might happen. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to hold up a mirror to dysfunctional patterns. They may not like what they see, but you've given them the opportunity to grow. Whether they would take that opportunity remained to be seen. In the meantime, I had my own life to live, one defined by genuine connections, meaningful work, and the family I chose rather than the one I was born into. The weeks following my mailbox surprises were predictably stormy. My parents enlisted extended family members to plead their case, resulting in calls from distant aunts and cousins I barely knew, all expressing shock at my cruelty to my loving family. What fascinated me was how the story had been reframed in these retellings. According to my relatives, I had become suddenly wealthy and refused to help my struggling family out of spite. Ashley's sabotage, my parents' enabling behavior, and the years of emotional neglect were conveniently omitted from this narrative. I maintained a simple, consistent response: "There's more to this story than you've been told. I'm open to healing relationships based on mutual respect, not financial transactions." Most of these well-meaning intermediaries retreated when they realized I wouldn't be guilt-tripped into compliance. A few, however, expressed curiosity about my side of the story. When I shared selective details, their perspective often shifted dramatically. "I had no idea," my mother's sister admitted after hearing about Ashley's deliberate sabotage. "That's not a prank. That's destructive." My parents maintained their stance of wounded innocence, though their approach evolved from outrage to martyrdom. My mother sent a particularly manipulative email 3 weeks after receiving my package. "We've accepted that you don't want to help your family financially. That's your choice, though it breaks our hearts. We only ask that you consider how this will look to everyone who knows us." A daughter with means refusing to help her aging parents. Is that really the reputation you want? I didn't respond. The implicit threat of social consequences, always my mother's preferred control mechanism, had finally lost its power over me. Ashley's reaction took a different form. She launched a passive-aggressive social media campaign with thinly veiled posts about toxic family members and success-changing people. When this failed to elicit the sympathy she expected, she escalated to more direct attacks, sharing childhood photos with captions like, "Remember when you were still part of this family, and before money mattered more than blood?" I blocked her accounts and moved on with my life. The most surprising response came from Ethan. 1 month after receiving my package, he sent a text asking if we could meet for coffee. "Just the 2 of us," it read. "No Kayla, no parents, no Ashley." We met at a quiet cafe near my office. He looked different somehow. Less polished than at our family dinner, but more authentically present. "I've been thinking about what you wrote," he began, turning his coffee cup in circles, "about taking the easy path." I nodded, but remained silent, giving him space to continue. "You're right," he admitted finally, a genuine sigh escaping him. "I've always gone along with whatever causes the least drama, even when I knew things weren't right." He took a deep breath. "What Ashley did to you? I knew it was wrong. I should have said something. It was the first acknowledgement from any family member that my experience was valid, and it nearly brought me to tears. "Why didn't you?" I asked softly. He shrugged, looking genuinely pained. "Fear, I guess. It was always easier to let Ashley have her way. And then, I don't know, it was like once we all took a position, we had to stick with it. Admitting we were wrong would mean facing how badly we treated you." We talked for nearly 3 hours that day. Ethan asked questions about my struggle after being fired, listened without defensiveness, and expressed genuine remorse for his role in my isolation. He didn't ask for money or favors, just the opportunity to build a more honest relationship. "I'm not asking you to forgive everyone," he said as we parted.
"Just maybe consider that some of us are capable of change." It was a start, a small one, but genuine. We began meeting monthly for lunch, carefully avoiding family drama and instead focusing on rebuilding trust through honest conversation. He enrolled in a business program at a local community college, determined to develop legitimate skills rather than chasing get-rich-quick schemes. 6 months after my packages were delivered, I received an unexpected email from Ashley. The subject line was simply, "I'm sorry." The message was brief, but startling in its departure from her usual communication. "The donation you made forced me to attend that workplace bullying workshop." I went planning to roll my eyes through the whole thing, but some of the stories people shared, they messed me up. I saw myself in the bullies they described. I'm not saying this changes anything between us, and I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to know I'm starting to understand what I did to you. It wasn't a comprehensive apology or a promise of transformation, but it was the first time Ashley had acknowledged causing harm without immediately minimizing or excusing her actions. I responded with a simple, "Thank you for letting me know," leaving the door cracked without rushing to reconciliation. My parents remained entrenched in their position. At Christmas, they sent a card signed, "Your loving family," with no personal message, a performative gesture maintaining the fiction that they had done nothing wrong. I donated to a retirement planning nonprofit in their name and sent a card expressing hope that someday we might build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. As for me, life continued to flourish. My career advanced, my friendship circle deepened, and I found joy in mentoring young professionals navigating difficult workplace dynamics. I started dating again, cautiously at first, then with increasing openness as I learned to trust my own judgment about character. Bella and I settled into our peaceful townhouse, making it truly home. I reclaimed my passion for photography, capturing images that told stories of resilience and connection. Some evenings, sitting in my garden, watching Bella chase butterflies, I felt a contentment I'd never known possible. The quiet joy of living authentically, unburdened by the exhausting pursuit of approval from those incapable of giving it. The most profound lesson I learned through this journey wasn't about money or success or even family dynamics. It was about the liberation that comes from defining your own worth rather than accepting others' limited valuation. It was about the courage to stand in your truth, even when voices from your past insist you should acquiesce for the sake of peace. True peace, I discovered, doesn't come from appeasing those who would diminish you. It comes from building a life aligned with your own values, surrounded by people who celebrate rather than sabotage your growth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can send to someone's mailbox isn't what they want, but what they need. A mirror reflecting truth, an invitation to growth, a boundary that honors both your worth and their potential to become better. So, what about you? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't celebrate your success? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. How did you handle it, and what did you learn? If you found value in my story, please like this video and subscribe for more conversations about building healthy relationships and standing in your truth. Remember, sometimes the family we create through authentic connections nurtures us more than the one we're born into. Thank you for being part of my chosen community today.